everything in life, but definitely in podcast and business, is an exchange of time for a reward. So I want you to be thinking at all times, not what's in it for me, what's in it for them. Podcast Growth Nation, welcome back to another very special, as always, episode of Podcast Growth University, where we talk all things podcasting all the time. I hope you enjoyed our latest episode, The Truth About Podcast Growth. We went into some actual numbers of not only ourselves, but some of our clients and where they are in their journey, and hopefully that can help you set your expectations of what success is to you, and you won't get lost in the rabbit hole of other people saying, I have 1 million downloads an episode and all this happy jazz. I want you to have the truth because I think that's really the only way to move forward. Today, for episode number 20, as I mentioned on the latest episode before this, we're going to talk about finding and getting aligned guests. So I know in the beginning for us, we used to go through Instagram and we would just screenshot profiles of people that we thought would be really good guests. And a lot of people just never got back to us. And honestly, that will happen to many of us. That's kind of par for the course. In the beginning, it's very hard to get big guests, quote unquote, successful guests. But what I want to go through today is, how do we find guests, first of all? How do we determine if they're aligned guests? And then are there any tips and tricks we can use to create a higher likelihood to get guests that are beyond our current reach? So somebody who has a big following that you might not think you can get. Are there any tricks? Are there any tips that we can throw out there to increase the likelihood of them coming on the show? So first things first, understand this. Everything in life, but definitely in podcast and business, is an exchange of time for a reward. So I want you to be thinking at all times, not what's in it for me, what's in it for them. When we are talking about finding and getting aligned guests, the finding part I'll go into, but the getting aligned guests is usually you talking about what is in it for them. What are they going to get out of being on your show? And I think a lot of us, we don't put that in the messaging. So we might reach out to somebody and say, hey, I'd love to have you on my show. All right, cool. Tell me more. Why would I want to come on your show? So this is what I call using your area of perceived perception. What does that mean? Well, maybe you only have 50 downloads an episode. That's not necessarily a super high upside for somebody who's very busy and is caring about the numbers. Maybe you have a Facebook group that has a lot of people. Maybe your show is growing, 100% month over month. So I had 50 downloads the first month. Now we have 100 downloads. Now we have 200 downloads, right? Now we have 400 downloads. If you can word that in a positive way in your email or your message, that can help. So what we did in the beginning is we would say that we're doing 3 episodes a week, and this is going to be kind of a rough draft, but what we would say is we've grown whatever it was year over year. So the first year we had 1,000 downloads. The second year we had 28,000 downloads. The third year we had however many downloads. What that's doing is that's creating a perceived area of perception, AKA, well, they don't have a lot of downloads, but it seems like their show is growing pretty quickly. So this is a valid use of my time. We have a client who we're working with who doesn't have a super successful podcast, but they have a very big email list that they've built from their business. So in the messaging, when we're reaching out to shows for them, they'll say, this show is getting 200 downloads per episode, but we send out an email to the entire email list of 60,000 plus people. That's a really good use of your time if you're trying to get the word out about whatever you're doing as a podcast guest. If you have a business, if you have a book, whatever it may be. So as somebody who goes on a lot of podcasts, and honestly, I don't really care. I don't ask for download numbers or any of that. I want to add value. But if I had to choose between 5 shows, I would want to choose the show that has the highest upside for me. And that would probably be in the email somebody would send me. It would say, hey, Kev, we love what you're doing. We'd love to introduce you to our audience, and we'd love to introduce our audience to you. That's basically saying, I don't just want to have you on the show. I want to make sure that it's a win-win. Then I would try to go into some form of value. And again, if I'm all over the place in this episode, I apologize. It is Thursday. It's been a very, very, very long week, and I am definitely riding the lightning when it comes to burnout. So I'm going to try to keep it concise, and I'm going to try to keep this to a short episode, but that never seems to happen. So after I introduce myself and I tell you a little bit about who I am, the show, and the fact that I want to have you on to introduce you to our audience and introduce the audience to you, I'm going to probably go into the area of perceived perception. So this is a good example. You could literally say, our show is growing rapidly. We produce 3 episodes a week, whatever it is, and we send out a email blast to our entire email list for every episode. We also create 3 pieces of social media content for every one of our guests, and it gets featured on our website. Now imagine that versus, hey, blank, I'd really love to have you on my podcast. Let me know if that works. Like, that's just it's completely different. So when we're getting aligned guests, one of the reasons we were able to get some pretty big guests in the beginning is because we spent a lot of time, really conscious effort, saying, okay, what can we send in this email? Obviously, that's true and not lies. What can we send in this email that increases the probability of this person not only reading it, but saying, wow, that's a valuable use of my time? And for us, it was many of the things I just said. We create social media content for everybody that comes on the show. Here's an example. We would say that. We always say in the email or whatever message, we always give our guests an opportunity to plug anything they want at the end. I want them to know when you come on, you're going to get the opportunity to talk about your stuff. It's not going to be for the entire episode, but we will give you an opportunity to talk about it at the end. We always would say it will only take a half hour of your time. That's another way is, look, it's only going to take 30 minutes. It's completely virtual. It's not a lot of your time. We never did any pre-calls. So a lot of people do pre-calls where I want to get on the phone with you or Zoom and I want to get to know you before I interview you. We never did that because that honestly will lower the chances of you getting a guest. Most people are busy and they're not going to do pre-calls, especially if you need them more than they need you. That's the way I'll put it. So for us, it was really about making sure that we were stacking the value. How much am I going to get for 30 minutes of my time? That's what this person's going to ask. So you're going to get a great interview. You're going to get social media content. You're going to get to plug your stuff. It's only 30 minutes. It's going to end up on our website. It's going to end up in our email, whatever it may be. This is another thing you can do. We would say in the email that we have had blank, 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 blank on the show. So we have had these other successful guests on the show. Therefore, you know it's a valuable use of your time, because if it wasn't a valuable use of their time, they wouldn't have come on. Now, again, if you're getting your first quote unquote big guest, you're going to really, really have to play the numbers and send a bunch of messages. But this is just the thoughtful intention that I would have. What can I convey in my message that lets them know that this is the most valuable use of your time or their time? Even if we don't have a ton of listens, where can we stack the value? Where can I stack the value? Okay. Now, when I say getting aligned guests, that's really what I mean. You have to be very strategic with the way you send your messages. One thing I'll tell you is there was a guest that we wanted to have, and I said, honestly, I'm going to try to send this person a video. I'm just going to send this person a video and basically say that. We have a podcast. We have blank amount of episodes. We've had these other people on, and we'd love to introduce you to the audience. It's not going to take long. It's totally virtual, and we'll create some content for you too. Is that something you might want to do? And this person actually screenshotted the video that I sent, and they used it in one of their classes for how to build connections online. So this person ended up coming on the show, and she said, that's one of the best messages I've ever gotten. Not that I said all the right things, but it was me saying, hey, this is why our show is valuable to you. And I sent it in a video. We actually have gotten several of our guests by sending videos. So that's something I would try too. Again, the landscape of social media changes so quickly, but if you follow somebody who has a pretty big following, they probably aren't used to getting videos. So if you send them a video, they might open it and they might say, oh, let me check this out. I haven't gotten one of these before. So that's another way to do it is, how do you differentiate yourself? How do you differentiate yourself from everybody else sending them messages? For a while, when we had our studio, we would sit down and we would have a list of 5 people that we were going to message that day, and we would record custom videos in the studio, but we were sending these to like The Rock, and I don't even know, I'm sure The Rock probably never even saw it. So at some point, it's like, this person's probably not going to come on unless a lot changes over the course of the next however many years.
Hi, my name's John Laurito, and I just wanted to give a big shout out to Kevin Palmieri. I had reached out to him. He had been referred to me when I had shared with a friend of mine some interest in doing a podcast, and he said, you've got to use Kevin. He's fantastic. He's the best around. He'll get you started and off the ground and soaring high in no time. And take it from somebody who knows nothing about podcasting other than maybe saying a few things. But as far as behind the scenes, the startup, everything, I knew nothing. Kevin was phenomenal in terms of leading me through the whole process, and not just easy to work with, but really, really knows his stuff. A great combination between leading me through all the stuff I had no idea what I was doing, but also really listening to me and understanding what it was I was trying to accomplish and what my vision is. So whether you're looking for somebody to help you and get you started, or somebody, as I've done, where I'm putting it entirely in his hands because I've got total trust and confidence in him, and he is a true pro and easy to work with, any of those ends of the spectrum, you're going to have a lot of success and a lot of fun working with Kevin. Trust me. Thanks.
So that's what's in it for them. That is the thing to be thinking of. And what is our unique area of perceived perception? And when I say perceived perception, all I really mean is it might not be the show. Right? It might not be that we have 100 episodes and we have 100,000 downloads. It might be we create social media content and we share everywhere, and we do a website thing, and we put it at the blog, we put it in our email list, all that stuff. We have to stack as much value as possible. All right. So finding and getting aligned guests. When we're talking about finding guests, especially aligned guests, and when I say aligned, I mean aligned with the brand, aligned with the value that you want to deliver to your audience, and aligned with the character too. Understand that there's a lot of people out there that might seem like really good guests, but that doesn't mean that they have a message that you want to spread to your audience. So I want us to figure out who is an aligned guest first. So for a while, we kind of had this filter that we would run potential guests through, and it was, we wanted to make sure they had a really high character. We wanted to make sure they were a good person. Expertise. We wanted to make sure that they were an expert in their field. Communication. We wanted to make sure that they were a really, really, really good communicator. And then there was perception. We wanted to make sure that they had some sort of following, and it was going to help us, right? It wasn't going to make us look bad with somebody saying, hey, who is this person? I've never heard of them. We wanted to be a show that people would say, wow, they get really good guests. So what we would do is we would research somebody and say, okay, on a scale of 1 to 10, where is their perception? It's only a 6. All right. On a scale of 1 to 10, how strong of communicators are they? Oh, wow, they're a really good speaker. 8. Right? On a scale of 1 to 10, what is their expertise? How well do they know what they're talking about? And we'd go through that, and if it was above a certain score, we'd say, all right, cool, let's do that. Because you might want to have somebody on the show who doesn't have a following, but they have a really good message, or they have a really cool story, or whatever it may be. They're doing something really powerful in the world. You might want to have them on, even though it's not necessarily going to elevate your show. So in order to find aligned guests, we first have to figure out what is aligned. And I'm always going to push you as a podcaster to go back and listen and watch the episodes where I talked about, let me see, the titles. I talked about your 10-word description. I talked about understanding your audience. The best guests are the ones that are most aligned with your audience. So I want to make sure I put that out there. So sit down and figure out, okay, what is aligned? If I could have people on my podcast, what are the check boxes I'd like them to check? Is it character? Is it perception? Is it expertise? Is it communication? Is it what they're doing in the world? Are they funny? You're going to have your own specific one because you're most likely not doing a show the same way we did. But I wish I had that in the beginning, because we definitely had some misaligned guests early on that I would not have had later. So the only way to find aligned guests is to figure out what does aligned actually mean to you. Okay, Lastly, for this episode, my goodness, it goes by so fast. All right, finding and getting. This is more finding. So there's a couple platforms that I would recommend, and I'm not talking about social media platforms. Obviously, you can send messages on Facebook, on LinkedIn, on Instagram, on TikTok, whatever. You can send messages through all those things. But imagine if there was a website that was kind of set up like a dating website for podcasters. There are several of those, and it makes it a lot easier to get guests and for you to get on their shows, because that's why people are there. So the two I recommend, and I'm not sponsored, I'm not getting paid for this, I don't have any affiliation. There's podmatch.com and matchmaker.fm. So what you do is you create a profile, just like you would if you were on a dating site. And again, what do you want to do? You want to make this profile reflect what is in it for them. What is in it for a potential guest if they were to come on your show? What is your area of perceived perception? What are they going to get? What will the result of them being on this show be for them? You're trying to give them a highlight. You're trying to give them a preview of what it's going to be like. And the better you do that, the more success you'll have with getting guests. I can assure you, as somebody who goes on a lot of shows, I'm going to say that until I'm blue in the face, different messages do different things. Different messages make you feel different ways. And I don't care because I love podcasting, so I'm not super focused on the amount of downloads or the amount of episodes. But if you want to build your credibility, you have to talk about that stuff. And you have to figure out what is your area of perceived perception. Again, I might have said that 55 times in this episode. This is what happens when you get to the end of a week. Honestly, it's been a grind the last 6 months. They've been very, very heavy. So let me see. Is there anything else I want to touch on in this episode? I would say continue to make sure that you're telling them what's in it for them. What is their area of perceived perception? And then I would make profiles on Podmatch, on matchmaker.fm. They both cost money. I think they're $19, $29, $39 a month. But it's a good place to meet other people. It's a good place to get aligned guests because you can go through and say, oh, this person's been on this show. This person's been on this show. And you can do research. The best way to figure out your alignment is to kind of mess it up. You'll have people on and you might say, I wish I didn't have them on. I might not want to release that episode. That's a whole nother thing too. But what I would say is if you have the opportunity, do some research. Do some research to see how do the episodes go when this person is on. Is it smooth? Are they good at answering the questions? Do they promote themselves? Is that all they do? Is their microphone good? Is their backdrop good? Is their audio quality good? It gives you a good opportunity to kind of preview what that experience is going to be like. And then if you don't feel like it's aligned, then you don't really have to do it, I would say. But that's the other thing too, is when we're early on, oftentimes aligned guests means they might have a good setup. They might have a good video camera and they might have some good audio. So aligned changes as you elevate and as you grow and as you find success in the podcast industry. I think that's it. I think that's all I have for today. Let me go through, look at my notes. Yeah, that's where I see a lot of people going wrong. A lot of people forget that it's an exchange, and it's an exchange of time for value. So just make sure you're stacking the value. And it's like that with anything, right? If you're trying to get somebody to go to a movie, the way you sell them on the movie is different. So this is a horror movie. It's awesome. This person is in it. We can get dinner before. I'll buy the soda. I'll drive. Value, 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 value. Every piece of value you add increases the likelihood of this person going to the movie, aka coming on your show. So that is what I have for you today, Podcast Growth Nation. I know I'm supposed to know what I was going to do for the next episode, but I don't off the top of my head. Let me look. Yeah, I don't really know right now what we're going to do. Maybe I'll throw it in as a little ad before this episode launches. But as always, if you are interested in a free call, please, please, please reach out. I did one, last week with an amazing listener. It's wonderful. Again, I'm not going to sell you anything. I just want to add value. And if you do ask what it takes to work with us, I will let you know. But that is not my ultimate goal. As always, keep on podcasting, keep on being amazing. Thank you for tuning in, even though Kevin is very, very, very sleepy. And if you ever have any questions, do not hesitate to shoot me a DM. My handle is @NeverQuitKid. I'll talk to you all later and keep on podcasting.